right, good morning, everyone. Welcome to day 3 of Success Week. Thank you for logging into Resumes That Get Results. We just wanted to welcome you to this session and let you know that as an attendee, if you are attending live, you are muted upon entry. But if you have questions or have concerns, or if you need clarification on anything, you can definitely use the chat feature, or you can raise your hand in the bottom right-hand side of your screen, and we will address those as quickly as possible. If you are attending this session as a recording, definitely reach out to any of us after you view the session, and hopefully we can answer all of your questions as well. So this session will be recorded for those who are unable to join. And without further ado, I will hand it over to Maria for Resumes That Get Results.
Thank you, Megan. Let me go ahead and share my screen. Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. As mentioned, I'm Maria Silos. I'm one of the 2 career coaches that we have at the Western Campus. Dennis Joyce is also joining and will be handling the chat room. So again, as Megan mentioned, if you have anything that you have questions about, feel free to type it in the chat box. Dennis will try to answer questions, and if it's something that we're going to be covering, he'll let you know that as well. Otherwise, he will respond to your question. So this is just to let you know a little bit of logistics here. This normally was a 2-hour workshop that we've pared down to 1 hour. So some of the details that you may get after this workshop, you can email us and we'll let you know in our next steps. So let's kind of get started. Oops. Okay. There we go. Okay, so our workshop agenda and what we're going to be covering today, the purpose of the resume and what really makes it effective. We have tons of general guidelines that we're going to go over. Some of the things you probably never even thought you'd need to pay attention to, but is very, very important when you're putting together your resume. Primarily with the types of resumes, literally 90% of this workshop will be on chronological resumes. We do have a slide that I'll put up side by side on functional and combination style resumes. And we'll explain those, but literally it's a 1-slide piece. Then we're going to jump into each part of the resume and how to structure that. And for various students that we have or participants that we have today, I'll kind of mention at that time, for example, if you're an IT student or a health career student or a visual or creative design student, your structure may be a little bit different. For the masses, we're going to talk general, and we're going to talk about the general order of how the resume should be put together with the most important information at the top. But I will jump in and let those groups of individuals know that where their pieces might go for their resumes. Where you see the workshop activity, the stop sign, that's really what we've cut out of the workshop that we do in person. Since you won't have the information in front of you, again, this will be more of a discussion and instruction than being able to do the worksheet. So just so that you know that. The last 5 minutes, we will basically jump back to cover letter and references, and then talk about next steps. And I'll share with you where you can find those cover letters and references as well. Okay, so purpose of a resume. The purpose of a resume really is to help sell yourself. This is what you will use in the interview that will help you as well as the employer understand what it is that you're trying to share with them. So this will also help you remember some of your stories and things that you do want to get across based on your skills and abilities to whoever you're meeting with first. Really what a resume is not, it's not an autobiography or a life history of everything you've done since you've started working. We do want you to go back maybe 10 or 15 years. So if you do have that much information, you'll definitely want to go ahead and include that. But if you've been working for longer than that, you want to list some information that is most relevant. What it also is not is a laundry list of your job duties. What we tend to see is that in bullet points, it's job duty after job duty. We are now going to be putting that into what we call a job responsibility statement. And these terms you're going to hear momentarily. Excuse me. This resume is something that really should be written by you individually. There are some folks out there that can assist you in putting it together, but what you really don't want to do is have someone else write your resume for you. You know you the best, so you definitely want to make sure that you're the one who's writing your resume in your words. So what an effective resume is, and I'll kind of put these up on the screen here. First of all, it quickly gets the attention of the hiring manager. They're seeing the information that they need to find quickly, whether it's in the headings or in the way that you've structured your resume. It provides the overview of your experience, education, and skills, and it shares with them why you might be the best candidate for them. It should be easy to read. Again, with having everything outlined in categories, if they need to find your education right away, they're going to go to that particular heading and be able to see that. And this last one, the offering enough information but not overwhelming the reader, that's a fine line. I call that dangling a carrot, and how far from you do you need to dangle that carrot? Enough to make them want to hear more, hence inviting you in for the interview. So that's really what you want to do, is get to the interview point, because again, your resume is going to be that 1 or 2 pages of general information that you want them to say, I need to talk to this person a little bit more because I like what I'm seeing. So general guidelines, as we mentioned. So first of all, start with a blank Word document. There are many templates out there for you to use, and we're asking you not to utilize a template. Plan on making updates to this document over and over again, and a lot of times with a template, you're unable to either move sections or put things where you really want them. So we definitely want you to start off with a plain Word document. That way you can manipulate the document however you want. Make sure that you are using the spell and grammar check. Make sure that you have someone proofreading it. You definitely would like folks like us, career coaches, to look over your resume. You may want supervisors, co-workers, family members, anyone who's willing to look over your resume. You definitely should have them proofread your resume. Resumes should not be longer than 2 pages with consistent format, meaning if you're center justifying titles or headings, they each should be in that order. If you are using bold or italics in certain areas to describe whether it's a job title or company or something that's very, very important, you want to make sure that you are consistent with that. There are some common fonts, the ones that you see there, Times New Roman, Arial, Calibri, Cambria, and Verdana. Those are some common font styles that you may want to select. This is not the time to get fancy with a style that may be a little bit more difficult to read. The font size is also important as well. So primarily the whole document will either be in 11 or 12 point font. And again, this is completely up to you, and this is where some of that detail can be showcased. So for example, sometimes people will do the headings in 12 point font, all caps and bolded. They all should be that way then. They may do the body of the information under that heading in 11 point font just to save a little bit of room and have the heading actually stand out. So again, it's completely up to you. This is your resume. You can do the whole document in 11, the whole document in 12. You can vary the font, the spacing, all of that, but we can help you with that. So if you definitely work with us in the Career Center, we definitely can help you make your resume look exactly how you'd like it to look. Impressive. You want to go back, as I mentioned, maybe 10 to 15 years of relevant work experience. We'll talk about that as well. When we talk about statements, everything on your resume should be a short phrase. So there's no long sentences. You're not trying to fill space. You're trying to make this as concise as possible. And as I mentioned earlier, the most important information should be at the top third of the page. When we go through some of the categories, you'll see why that's important. Again, we mentioned not to exaggerate or misrepresent your information. We're going to focus on action verbs. So after this workshop, we will send out a list of action verbs to the attendees. So this is something that is fairly useful. You can also find this on the Career Center website under our career library. A lot of these documents that can help you as you put together your resume. But action verbs, what recruiters or managers don't want to see is the same word over and over again. So managed, 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 assisted, assisted, assisted. There are many words that you can utilize to say exactly the same thing, but change it up a bit. So that's why those action verbs that you're going to start every sentence with on your resume are important to have a variation in them. If there are any employment gaps, you want to be prepared to discuss those. So not necessarily might they see, if you haven't been working for 2 years, but they see your education category and that's where what you've been doing, you've been in school the last couple of years, it'll make sense to them why there's a gap. But again, just make sure that you are able to discuss those employment gaps if you have any. One good thing about how you're going to structure your resume is you're only going to use years. So if you've worked someplace from 2015 to 2017, you're not going to include the months on this. So they're not looking for those very short gaps. They're looking for the large year type gaps. One of the things I'll mention is that there's a difference between your resume and the application that you submit. On an application that you submit, you will need to know what the months are for your employment. But on your resume, that's something that you can leave in the years only, okay? Again, while in the past, hobbies, those other things were important to employers, right now, relevant information is what needs to fill your resume. You also want to use either resume paper, which is a little bit expensive, and I'll talk about that in a second, or just plain old white copy type paper, 20-pound copy paper. Resume paper is expensive, and you can buy it by the sheet, or you can buy it in a pack. But what I suggest is make sure you are not printing off like 20 resumes when you're done with your resume. You're always going to be updating and making changes to your resume. So keep that resume paper handy. And when you get invited for an interview or you're going to a job fair and want to make a great impression, that's the time to maybe print off a couple of resumes, a couple extra for your interview, or if you know you're meeting with 10 or 15 employers at a job fair or anything like that, you'll want to make sure you have at least that amount and a couple of extra. But somebody may notice something and you're like, oh, okay, I didn't realize that. And you have to go home and make that change. So then what we don't want you doing is wasting time, wasting money, because that resume paper is expensive. But again, if you want to make a good impression and it's that employer that you really want to work for, put it on some good resume paper. It does make a difference. I'm a big movie buff, so for me, you'll see some things, but if you've ever seen Legally Blonde, that particular movie, Elle Woods turned in her resume to the firm, and it was pink and it was scented. And again, that stuff works in the movies. It's not something that you really want to do in real life. So not only pink, but there are people who use the very bold colors like neon yellow or whatever. Again, you want to keep it to either resume paper, which is that white or gray or cream color, and then not use the kind of gimmicky, oh, if my resume's in a pile, if it's yellow, they'll be able to find it. Again, that stuff works in the movies, doesn't really work in the real world. You will be the impressive thing that really stands out, and they'll put your resume in the right pile to talk to you more. All right, so little quick test, and I'll answer these since, again, we're doing this workshop. How many pages are considered acceptable? Again, no more than 2 pages. How many years of work experience should you include? We said, maybe 10 to 15 years. Is it appropriate to use a template? False. We want to make sure we're using a plain old Word document. And is it important to list all job duties associated with each job? Again, false. We're going to share with you what a job responsibility statement is and then what accomplishments are. And those are really how you want to build your resume for the employment piece. Good job. I'm sure you guys answered all those right. Okay, so types of resume. Again, this is the one we're going to talk about the most. It's the one that's chronological, and it's the one most widely used. And again, it's going to list your education, your experience. Everything's going to be in reverse chronological order on the entire document, meaning the most current information is going to be listed first in any of those headings that you're going to list. Okay? This is our one slide where I'm going to put up the functional and combination style format. Again, a functional format needs a little bit more because you're focusing on skills and competencies, and they're wide, large thinking skills and competencies. It's not actually what you've done and when you've done it. Combination is a little bit better because it can be a little bit of the chronological and functional together, but there's a way to do that. And again, most of us use just a plain old chronological resume that best shares what our current, whether it's education, experience, any volunteer work we've been doing, everything is current at the top of those categories. And that's really, it really makes it easy for an employer to find what they're looking for and paint that picture of who you are rather than get confused. Okay. But there are instances where these style resumes do make sense, and we can work with you if that's your preference. Okay. So parts of a resume, this is what we're going to go over. We're going to go over the header. We're going to go over a summary. Everyone's going to start off with a summary. Next is going to be your education, if you're in school, excuse me, and then your employment history. After that, there's a bunch of other categories that you may want to add based on what you have that you want to share. Okay, so let's kind of get started. Header. Seems easy, huh? So it's your name, address, and contact information, which would include your phone number and email address. And if you have a fairly decent LinkedIn account that you are open to having someone take a look at, you definitely want to include that information so they can go directly to it. You want to use a formal name. For your address, you definitely want either an address or at the very least your city and state so that they know you're a local candidate. Phone number, if you're only going to list one, you can list it just like this. If you have two phone numbers that you want to list, definitely needs to be identified. So if it's home, cell, mobile, whatever wording you want to use, make sure that you identify each phone number. And again, put the one that you want them calling first. So if you want them calling on your cell phone first, put that number and then space over, and then add your second phone number. Email address should be a professional email address. So whether it's your name and some numbers, whatever it may be, you want it to be professional. What we don't want to see is what I just put up on the screen, and that may be an older email that you've had for a long time that really, it might be a little bit more playful with your friends, but when you're in a professional work environment, it's something that you want to make sure you're establishing yourself as a professional and not, party girl 96 at Hotmail or go Steelers, volleyball babe, those things. Again, personal life, great. You can keep those email addresses, but you'll want to either create or have a professional email for job search, and then obviously for anything within your work environment or professionals that you're meeting and talking with. So fairly simple. The other thing is for your phone, please make sure you're checking your voice message. You may have a pre-recorded voice message that you've had on there for years and forgot what it even is. You want to make sure there's no music in the background, no kids screaming in the background. This is not the time to have your home where you might list Bobby, Susie, all the little kids are on there. Again, this is one of those things where it should either have your name, you've reached Maria Silos, whether it's the phone number, it could even be the automated piece that they've at least reached the right number, okay? But I know that if you have one of those quirky type of voice messages, there are times employers will just hang up and you won't even know that they've reached out to you. So again, when you're job searching and putting together your resume, you want to make sure that you are as professional as you can be. Okay, moving on. Again, so these are the pieces of, pull that one back for a second. So these are the pieces of the summary. The summary is going to be that first piece on your resume. It has replaced the objective. The summary actually shares some things about who you are versus what you are looking for. It should be 3 or 4 statements long, written in paragraph form if possible. And there's one other sample that I'll share with you. And really throughout the whole document, throughout the whole resume, you do not want to use the word I. Your name's at the top. We know that this is your resume. You definitely want to kind of keep it in that almost third person type of wording. Okay, so the components of the summary. These are kind of those 4, whether they're statements or sentences that you want to put together. So occupational focus, hard skills, soft skills, and some sort of special characteristic. So with an occupational focus kind of leading off the summary, it is going to be who you are professionally. Okay, so professionally as a student, what kind of student? An IT student, an accounting student, a health career student, nursing student, whatever it may be. You want to list then kind of in that second sentence or statement, some of your hard skills that you are either knowledgeable with, meaning you've taken classes in, or that you are skilled in, that you've already worked in. So those hard skills are job functions, if you will. Okay. And we'll get to a sample of this so you can see it. Soft skills are those behavioral traits, but they're not just a simple word of a behavioral trait. It gives a little bit of an explanation as to how you see yourself with that particular trait. And then some sort of special characteristic that really stands out about who, what makes you different from all the other nursing students applying, accounting students applying, IT students applying. Something has to stand out about who you are. So kind of here's what it's all about. And this is on a sample that we have. So an occupational focus is personable accounting student looking to gain an entry-level opportunity within an accounting firm. Very simple, kind of shares an overall of who you are. Hard skills, skilled with financial statement preparation, accounts payable, accounts receivable, and some tax. Now notice the word skilled. That means I will see where he or she has done some of this work. If you are not skilled because you have not worked in the field yet, this is where you might put knowledgeable with. And then when we get to education, they'll be able to see that you've taken classes and are very knowledgeable with those areas. Okay. Soft skills. So again, remember I said these are kind of how you feel about those particular words. So soft skills here are trustworthy, accurate, dependable, but now you're sharing how you see yourself. So you are trustworthy with money, accurate with balancing, and dependable on getting paperwork completed and filed on time. That shows a little bit more of how you feel those particular words represent you. And then a special characteristic, so kind of known for, or you can start it with that, technical and computer skills, including accounting and tax software. Something that's relevant to, this is an accounting student, that may be helpful to already have some skill in that. Okay. So we want to kind of put this together, and I'll show you in a second what that looks like. Actually, let's kind of go to that, and then I'll come back to that slide in 1 second. This is what it would look like all together in paragraph form. Exactly what you did sentence by sentence, putting it all together in a paragraph form. Okay. Now I'm going to go backwards here because there is, you can also do your summary this way as well, which is paragraph plus a table of bullet points. So for example, the occupational focus in this one is an IT professional with extensive skills in computer networking administration, maintenance, and graphic network design. Soft skills, strong customer service skills. And then your special characteristic, and again, you can combine some of these sentences, ability to interact with diverse groups of people using tact and diplomacy. Your hard skills, instead of being in the paragraph, will be those things that you pull out and put in bullet points in this table format. So the hard skills are the implementation, integration, support, strategic planner, software design, and process improvement. It's not soft skills. It's not a bunch of wording. These are just hard skills. Okay. So that's kind of the summary of qualifications. You can do it in either format. We highly recommend doing it in this paragraph only when you first get started. Again, once you have some skills under your belt, you may want to decide to pull those out and do the one that I just showed you. Okay. All right. The next category for all of our students is going to be education. Because again, you're letting them know you are in school. Okay. So I'm just going to put these up here. Whoops. And then I will show you how that is. So first of all, you're going to list your most recent education first, which again would be that you're at Cuyahoga Community College. If you are not in school, you're going to list your high school but then education is going to be at the bottom of the page. When you're out of school after the first year you're out of school and getting into your work experience, after that, your education will go to the bottom as well, where mine is. They'll need to know your education, but again, your relevant work experience will take over at that point, okay? So this is really how we want you to list your education. Again, you're going to have your summary first, your education would be next. Cuyahoga Community College, city and state, the degree you are pursuing. So this person's pursuing an Associate of Business Administration. Their major is accounting. They have an expected graduation date. So it's something out in the future. I know what we need to update this, but May of 2021, May 2022, whatever it may be, you want to give them an idea. You have a year, a couple more years, a semester to go, so that they know, hey, I can hire this person in 6 months, or you know what, it's going to take me a year to get them up to speed anyway. It's good that they're in school, and then I can hire them after that. This is that stuff that will change. Your GPA will change. Your graduation may change. And then again, Dean's List, you might want to add to that. Each semester that you're on a Dean's List, you're going to list the semester and year. One of the most important pieces is the related coursework. This is huge to employers. They want to know what classes you have already completed. And it's the name of the class that you want to list, not, IT 1010, BADM 1020. They don't know what that stuff means. List the name of the class and do not abbreviate. So if it's Introduction to Business, don't put Intro to Business. Yes, that's how we kind of term it, but Introduction to Business, okay? This person also went to a school before that, so Northern Kentucky, city and state, and they've taken computer classes for 1 year. So again, no need to make someone jump through hoops and say, did this person graduate from this? What did they do there? Spell it out. They took computer science classes or general courses, 1 year, 1 semester, whatever it is. Okay. So that's education. All right. So under employment, I'm going to put a couple things up here, and this is kind of how we're going to go through it. First off, employment needs to be the name of a company, the city and state. The years are going to be off to the right-hand side. Again, it helps balance the page. Underneath the company name is going to be your job title. Underneath that is going to be your job responsibility statement. So remember, we said those job duties are going to be in paragraph form in a job responsibility statement. So if you've had those where they've been bullet points, now those are going to be all together in a nice cohesive couple of sentences describing what you do. What's going to be extremely important is your accomplishments. And you should have accomplishments after each one of your jobs that you have had. Because there's got to be something that stands out, and this is what the accomplishments are, something that stands out about how well you did the job. This is what's going to make a huge difference with employers, because they understand what it is that you feel is important that you have accomplished in that role for that organization. Okay, so next piece of employment, if you have worked and maybe moved into a new role because you were promoted, you don't want to list that separately. What we see sometimes is that the company name is listed 3 times because you've had 3 different jobs there. From when you're initially looking at something, it looks like you've had 3 different jobs at different companies. It doesn't register that it's the same company. So we want you to list the company name 1 time and the total number of years that you've been with that organization. Underneath that, same as when you did the one employer, job title, job responsibility statement, and accomplishments. What the new piece is that the job title you held before you got promoted is now going to be in there. The job responsibility statement of what you did in that role is going to be there, and maybe an accomplishment or two in that particular role. And off to the right-hand side will be the years that you were in those roles. Okay, so that total years line is going to have the information from, and if you guys can see my little mouse, from this year to this year, this is really what is going to be in this total years line. And if you are still working there, this is not going to be a year. This is going to say to present. Okay. So job titles, what does that actually mean? Again, if it's something where it's a general term like clerk, you may want to identify it a little bit more. Accounting clerk, IT helper or help desk, you know, those kinds of things. Job responsibility statements, as I mentioned, is going to be a high overview of what your overall responsibilities for that job are. Okay. And then accomplishments. Accomplishments, as I mentioned, are those things that you've done well in that job. So these are some memory joggers. Okay. So what did you do especially well on the job? What will your boss or coworkers remember about you? How do you know you did something good? Do you have performance measures and percentages that you can share? Did you get to help train someone? And again, those are leadership. Those are things that are brought out of this resume that you might not have necessarily shared, but that someone reading it will pick up. If you're a trainer, they trust you. They know that you can share what it is that you do with someone who's just coming in, and do it professionally, do it the right way, those kinds of things. And it doesn't matter if you've only trained one person. Again, because I know a lot of times our students are, well, it was only one person and it was for a couple of weeks. Well, still that matters. It doesn't always need to be saving $1 million, you know, changing some sort of major process. If you're proud of what you've done on that job, that's something that should be noticed and should be shared. Okay. So what we call with these accomplishment statements, or how to put them together, is what we call a SAR story. So it's a situation, action, result. Okay. So the situation is, what are you actually charged with? If you think about a story, like I streamlined a document that we had in the office because I felt like we got more out of it by having people check certain things that they did. And you think that's your accomplishment. That's a great thing. Here's where we start to put it together in that situation, action, result. So what was your situation? What were the actions that you took to make this happen? Okay. And then what's the ultimate result? Okay. Now that you've implemented that particular piece, you are now saving time. It's created an efficiency within the department, those kinds of things. Okay. So when you start doing these, you really have to write it out. And I know it's a little bit time consuming, but trust me, it's going to be way easier to do if you write it out. Situation, what are you tasked with? Actions, what were the actions that I did to do this, and what's the ultimate result? You may go back and think of another action that's important, etc. You may come out with two pieces that you want to identify. Yes, you streamlined a process, and then you want to talk about the efficiency in a different manner. Okay, so again, this is the best way to do this. And what we call this process, this SAR process, is an ED to ING. This is how you're going to remember it the best. Okay, so it's something that you are charged with, that you've done, and actions that you've taken, resulting that ING in an accomplishment, a result. Okay, so for example, established and achieved sales goals totaling 30% increase over previous year. Okay, so our ED and ING, you've established and achieved your sales goals. And the result is it's totaling 30% increase over previous year. Now, an employer, if they see something like this, they're going to be like, how did they do that? That, again, is that dangling carrot that's going to prompt them to say, I need to hear a little bit more about how they increase their sales 30%. Okay, that's what we talk about with those carrots. Provided excellent customer service to shoppers, encouraging repeat business. Again, the EDs to INGs. You've provided a service that encourages them to come back. Even in a food service industry, you have those people that come and request your stations or want you to serve on them because they've had excellent service in the past. You've upsold them to some great appetizers or whatever it is. They trust your judgment. They will tell you if something's not good. Again, those are those things that you might want to highlight. Trained safety coordinator, ensuring proper use of protection equipment. So again, the trained part, ensuring proper use of protection. Now you see we have different words here. We have established, achieved, totaling, provided, encouraging, trained, and ensuring. Those are part of those action verbs that you want to use a variety of that could say the same thing. Okay? So again, that document, whether it's provided after this, or you can find it directly on the Career Center webpage under our career library. Okay, so kind of moving on, this is what it would look like under the employment history. Name of the company, city and state, years are going to be over to the right. Underneath that is the job title, retail sales associate. In paragraph form is going to be your job responsibility statement. Now, I also want you to notice this. If it's a job that you are currently doing, so it says 2016 to present, it's not going to be in ED. It's going to be in present tense. Okay, so this is produce, deliver, provide, develop, assist. If it was past tense, if they were done last year, 2016 to 2019, all of that would be in past tense. Produced, delivered, provided, developed, assisted. Okay, so make sure that you're using the right terminology as well. That's something that we'll definitely check for and help you with. Okay, moving on to some of our optional categories. If you've done specific training and development for your field, you've got certifications or those types of things, and you want to list those, again, you might have another category. If you belong to any associations and clubs, this is one of those things employers look at quite often for. You want to be involved in the school, not just go to school. So if you do not belong to a business club, an IT club, we have tons of different clubs at the college, that is something you want to consider. Not only because you join the club, but you may want to take a leadership role, one of the officers, so president, vice president, treasurer, secretary. You may want to, it might be a good way because those clubs bring in guest speakers, so you're creating networking connections. It's just a great way to kind of enhance what it is you're doing with your education. Languages, and again, these are foreign languages. So for our IT students, I know a lot of times they have programming languages. This is not where you would have this. In fact, the next category, I'll share some stuff with you, but this would be your foreign languages. And again, don't just put that you are either fluent or whatever it is, basic Spanish or whatever. Let us know, or let them know. Do you speak it? Do you write it? Do you read it? Do you just understand it and comprehend it? So speak, read, write, and comprehend. There may be languages that you can understand, so you can comprehend and you can speak it, but you may not read it and you may not write it. So again, share what it is that you have with that particular language: intermediate, basic, fluent. And English, that's a given. So we don't want to put fluent in English. Excuse me, we see that quite often. Excuse me. Technical skills. Technical skills, again, for our IT students, are going to be maybe that third category. Okay, so it's going to be your summary, your education, and then technical skills. Okay. For most of us, technical skills will be at the end, because really it's going to be maybe some Microsoft Office, Word, Excel, PowerPoint, Access, Outlook. But technical skills for our IT students include maybe some software that they're familiar with, maybe some programming languages that they're familiar with, or have done some things within the classroom setting. Technical skills could also be for our health careers. So it could be maybe equipment that you've used, maybe some additional programs for our virtual or our visual and creative design. So maybe it's the Adobe suite, maybe Illustrator, or some of those might be interest to someone and might want to be a little bit further towards the top rather than on the bottom. Co-ops or internships, if you get some experience within your field of study, extremely important, highly recommend. I'm one of those people who will say, do not leave school without doing an internship or a co-op or having some sort of field experience within your field of study. You just give yourself a leg up to the competition right off the bat, creating those networking connections, actually physically doing the job and knowing what a day in the life is rather than observing or thinking that you know, and then graduating and getting out there and it's not really the right thing for you. And then volunteer work. A lot of us volunteer, whether it's at our places of worship or at a healthcare facility or maybe even a food bank. Or even maybe disaster relief. Again, you want to be able to share some of those experiences that you have a cause or something. Again, these are what some of those things help share about who you are. Okay, and again, only utilize the categories that pertain to you. If you don't have any volunteer work or don't speak any foreign languages, you're not going to necessarily have those. These are just optional sections for you. All right, our last kind of couple of minutes here, we're going to discuss cover letters and references. Cover letters, again, I'm going to put some information up here. Always accompanies a resume when you mail it. Not a lot of people fax anymore, or email it if it's requested. Okay. You want to customize each cover letter to that particular company and individual if possible. If you're using more of a template style, meaning you have the same kind of information that you generally want to share with employers, please, please, please make sure that you're reading it over and over again. What someone does not want to receive is something that's addressed to the wrong company, for the wrong position, or to the wrong person. It's a complete turnoff to an employer. They literally will quickly put your resume aside whether you are qualified or not. So this is one of those documents you want to make sure you pay attention to those particular areas of who you're addressing it to, what the job number title is, those kinds of things. If they ask you for salary requirements, you can list some of this information in your cover letter. This too should be proofread, and we proofread tons of cover letters, reference sheets, all sorts of things. So anything that you want, just another set of eyes, you definitely want to call us in the Career Center, okay? And again, a cover letter should be no more than one page, couple of paragraphs. And I know this is hard to see on the screen, and that's why I encourage you to get these quick reference guides off of our, again, that career library on our webpage. You can see this a little bit better, but that first paragraph is going to be how you heard of the opportunity and maybe, again, what that job number, job title is, those kinds of things. Second and third are your qualifications that meet their requirements. Why are you submitting your resume for this? Okay. And then that last fourth paragraph, third paragraph, whatever it may be, again, this is where you kind of sum it up, thank you for your time and in reviewing my documents. I look forward to soon an in-person meeting, or whether it's a virtual interview, anything like that. And then again, your salutation, sincerely, best regards, whatever, 3 lines, and your name. And again, if you have enclosures, like you've included your resume, something like that, make sure it's professionally written. You also want to maybe think about keeping your resume, your cover letter, your reference sheet, kind of with the same, and again, I'll put my mouse up here, with the same heading. So it's almost like your personalized stationery or heading, if you will. Okay. So it should be very similar. Okay. References. Okay. We're kind of bringing it to the home stretch here. Okay. So again, all these documents, your cover letter, your references, your resume, they are all separate documents and labeled as such. So whether it's Maria Silos-resume, Maria Silos-cover letter, Maria Silos-references, Silos Maria, again, however you're going to label them, make sure there's a consistent way for you to send this information. You need to have maybe 3 to 5 or 6 references total. And you want to make sure that you are getting their permission for them to be one of your references. You also want to keep in touch with them and make sure that you have their updated, most recent email address, most recent phone number, most recent contact information. Because the last thing you want is an employer to call someone and they get either this line number's been disconnected, or no longer in service, or whatever. You want to make sure that you're providing your future employer with really positive and good information so that they can get their part of the job done as soon as possible. The other thing is make sure that you provide your references when you're asked for them. It's not part of the initial process, but once you're asked for references, you're part of that last grouping, whether it's a couple, 2, 3 people, finalists, if you will, for that position when they start checking references. Okay. And again, your reference sheet, again, might have a similar heading. It will be labeled as such, references. And again, it may look like this, Mr. Bob Smith. And this piece right here is extremely important. This is this person's current supervisor. This is an internship supervisor. This is a current instructor. Maybe it's former internship supervisor, former supervisor. So again, put the relationship, if you will, in there, because sometimes the information, if Bob Smith went to a different company and he's your former supervisor, it'll make sense if he's at ABC company and you're at XYZ company, why you're contacting this person, because they're your former supervisor. And again, make sure you have phone number and email address. Again, let them know who may be calling them. Just send a quick email out to all of your references and say, hey, I've been interviewing with ABC company and they're going to be checking references. Please be on the lookout for either an email or a phone call from the company. I appreciate all that you're able to share with them. In fact, here's my updated resume. That way they can see what it is that you've provided about your work for them. Okay, so references can be extremely important for that. Okay, so the do's, again, get approval from 3 to 5 references. Make sure you tell them the name of the company that might be reaching out to them. And most importantly, make sure you thank them for being a reference and providing any positive and great information that they can. What you don't want to include is any friends or relatives. These need to be professional work references. You do not need to put references will be provided or whatever the statement is on the bottom. You don't need to do that on your references upon request. And again, a lot of times in the past, you used to list the actual supervisor name under and phone number under each employer, and you don't need to do that as well. Okay, so what did you learn? And again, if your resume doesn't distinguish you from others, you probably want to make some changes. Would you want to interview you with your current resume, or do you want to take the time to make some changes based on what you've just learned? If it doesn't focus on your relevant experience and your accomplishments, you might want to make some changes, because that's really what's going to make your resume and you stand out amongst others who are not getting this information. So kind of next steps. You can always have us look over your resume, our 800 number, which will patch you into each of the 4 career centers. There's a list, so call the 800 number and talk to the coach that is at that particular campus that can help you. You want to take this opportunity to maybe either recreate or edit the resume you currently have. Schedule your virtual appointment. We are doing virtual appointments, and we have a schedule out there already. And sometimes it may take 1 or 2 appointments to get it exactly finalized in the way that you want it sent out. Okay, so you know, it's rare that we have 1 coaching appointment and you're ready to go kind of thing. Most times it's 2, and sometimes it's even 3, just to get those final touches on there. And then we'll share with you where to upload your resume once it's finalized, so employers can then have access to your resume through the college, and that way they can seek you out on their own. But you definitely want to keep us informed if they reach out to you. Okay. So that's kind of it. We're hoping that you've gotten some good information today. Let me stop sharing my screen there. Well, that's coming up. Megan, I don't know if you have any kind of final words.
Thank you. This session was super helpful. I can't tell you enough how many questions we've had from students who are, you know, unfortunately, a lot of our students who had jobs are out of work, and they're looking for ways that they can kind of spruce up their resume to like make them stand out. And I'm plugging tomorrow's session too. I think a common misconception is a lot of companies, and maybe this isn't a misconception, but I think students don't think about interviewing right now in a virtual environment. I think a lot of people think no one's hiring, which I would say some
That's not true.
There are still a lot out there that are hiring. So we do have a virtual interview session that's going to be taking place tomorrow, and I just thank you so much for your time. I know Dennis has been monitoring the chat, and I have as well. This was a great session, and I'm sure we will have a lot of people watching the recording as well. So thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. Well, thanks, guys. Have a great day. And if anyone has any questions, please feel free to reach out to myself or Maria or Dennis.